Welcome to Health, Wellbeing and Lifestyle, where experts in the field inform, educate and inspire our community to be healthier, more balanced and live the lifestyle they love. Our first guest today, Melissa Hiemann, is a trauma therapist and author. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you so much for having me on.
So, Melissa, what is trauma and how does it relate to our relationships with others?
Sure, so trauma is actually a response that we have to something that we feel very scared of. So it can be when we're growing up or even when we're older, where we feel a strong stress response. So we feel very strong emotions, like our survival is being threatened. And these emotions in our body get trapped in our body. So it's not just trauma as in what most people think, as in they've seen a car accident, been in a car accident, or they've been to war and there's trauma in that sense. That there is those traumas, but there's also smaller traumas that greatly impact us as well. Like if we stood in front of the class and we were little and we got laughed at, and then that trauma response could be, I don't like doing public speaking anymore. And it can be micro traumas as well with our parents when they yell at us, or we've been left to cry it out as a baby. That can be a very large trauma for someone because there's no safety, there's no one there to help them with that survival response, and it gets stuck in their body. And how it can affect us in our relationships is if we do have that trauma, say with our primary caregivers growing up, where they yelled at us and were abusive towards us in any way, or they neglected us, what we do is we think on a subconscious level that that is a blueprint for how love is and how relationships should be. And so we unconsciously seek out people that were often like our parents. Unfortunately, if the parent wasn't very nice, we'll seek out a partner that is similar to them, because our body feels that that is normal. And so some people are like, why do I keep getting into bad relationships? Or why does this keep happening to me? Why do I find myself isolating myself and having a lot of conflict with anyone? And if we think back to our childhood and what we saw growing up, it can really give us some indication as to why these patterns are occurring in our lives in regards to relationships. With trauma usually happens in relationships. So we say trauma can be relational because it's happened with either a caregiver or an authority or someone else. And so we carry that trauma in our bodies, and we often carry it into relationships that we have as we become older, as we find a partner, but then even relationships with our kids, our co-workers, the people in the line with us at the shopping centre in the queue. We're all relating, and so certain things can get triggered that we don't even consciously know why, but that person's made us very angry, or we had a very strong emotional response. So we might say something or behave in a way that is maybe an overreaction to the actual circumstance, and we can't come in with it with a neutral mind, and that's usually because a trauma has been triggered from maybe a long time ago. And if people became more aware of that, they would be able to maybe seek help and find someone to help them work through it, so they can be a more peaceful person, so their relationships can be more peaceful, so they know how to work through conflict in a non-violent way. So yeah, it's really important that we're aware of trauma and how it can impact our relationships.
Could you explain the link between trauma and domestic violence?
Yeah, so that's a really important discussion, and I think it's a problem that is really being exacerbated at the moment. So what normally happens is with trauma is that we reenact our trauma. Okay, so I'll just give you an example for domestic violence because I have my own personal history of that. My mother watched her parents be in a domestic violence situation. So her father would drink alcohol, and he would get very triggered and angry and violent. And so my mother, as a toddler, felt she had to defend her mother and be strong. And then later, when my mum was in her 20s and she met my father, who was a lovely, peaceful man, she almost sabotaged that relationship because it didn't feel normal to her nervous system. That trauma had created a blueprint of no relationship should be violent, even though she didn't consciously want that. So she left my father and got with another man, and he was actually very similar to her father. He would actually do domestic violence in the house, and I witnessed that. And my little brother and sister were very young, and at 16 I had to help her leave that situation. But even though with all of that, when I became a young adult and got into a relationship, I was attracted to people that were controlling and abusive, and I ended up in a domestic violence situation myself. For some reason, my body was just drawn to that. So it's not in every circumstance, but in a lot, we're just recreating what we saw in childhood. I guess you could say I was the victim, but also my low self-esteem, my insecurity, and my allowance allowed me to stay in that relationship for a little while. And then when I started doing the healing work with a therapist, then I realized that, and I realized I could break this generational pattern and cycle.
What advice would you have for our viewers that are feeling like they're experiencing trauma in their relationships at the moment?
I would say that everyone is probably, if you're in a relationship with anyone, you're probably going to have experiences with trauma. And the way that you can indicate and know that you are is if you're having quite strong emotional responses. If you find yourself in a fear state, or in a very angry or controlling state where you want to change the other person's behaviour to make yourself feel better. Or we can replay what we saw in childhood and maybe want to start fights, or we saw our mother be very quiet, so we go very quiet and we don't speak our truth. So just being aware, just having a think about how did that look like for me growing up, and am I overly reacting or overly shutting down in my relationship with this person? If you feel like you're having some of these symptoms or these relational trauma issues, then definitely seek a professional, a therapist, to work through it if you believe there's something there.
That's such valuable and important information, Melissa. If you'd like to know more about Melissa and how trauma affects our relationships with other people, please go to her webpage on our website, wellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we have another interesting guest with another interesting topic. Stay tuned. After the break, Sue Williams, Doctor of Quantum Counselling and Clinical Hypnotherapist, will be talking about, can hypnotherapy really boost athletes and everyone's performance and general well-being? Welcome back. Our second guest today, Sue Williams, is a Doctor of Quantum Counselling and a clinical hypnotherapist. And the topic we'll be discussing today is, can hypnotherapy increase athletic and everyone's performance and our general well-being? Welcome, Sue.
Thank you, Megan. It's a real pleasure to be here.
So, Sue, can hypnotherapy really boost athlete and everyone's performance and our everyday well-being?
Certainly can, and it's been proven time and time again. In the general population as well as with athletes. And when you think of hypnosis, a lot of people think immediately of the stage hypnotists, and they're there, they serve a purpose, they're for entertainment. And when you come to a hypnotherapist, it's not scary, it's really just you going into a very relaxed state, feeling calm. They're less likely to block suggestions, and it's all about getting rid of negative mindset and installing positive suggestions moving forward. So in hypnosis of all kinds, we access the subconscious mind. We have learned by repetition. For example, we don't have to think about getting up out of the chair and walking. We don't have to consciously think, where are my legs? Where do I have to put my feet? The subconscious mind has learnt that by repetition from a very young age. Just think of a baby learning to walk. But the unfortunate thing about the subconscious mind is that we can train it in ways that aren't in our best interest. So anything that we are subjected to time and time again will become natural for our subconscious mind, and it will feed it back to us as normal behaviour. So if you come to a hypnotherapist, we start our session by getting you really relaxed. So we allow the conscious mind just to drift away, have a bit of a rest. And with some of the techniques, we actually formulate that the conscious mind is a separate being. And that separate being can just go and have a sleep for a while. As the hypnotherapy session progresses, that subconscious mind will often bring forward things that the person wasn't really aware of. But deep down, the subconscious mind says, excuse me, we really need to deal with this. So I'm telling you about it now, bringing it forward because perhaps it's been suppressed for a very long time. It's something that the person hasn't wanted to re-experience. So that's what we do. We bypass the analytical conscious mind, which is this frontal part of the brain where the thoughts and that sort of thing are created. We go down to the subconscious mind, and then we can find what the problems are, convince the subconscious mind that it can change, and change is a huge issue with everyone. And you really need to be in that mindset of wanting to change before the hypnotherapy will be effective.
How can we use mindset and mindfulness in our everyday lives?
Well, mindset and mindfulness are very much related to hypnosis. I think they're almost a bit like self-hypnosis because we are using our mind to create change within ourselves. So if you think what you do during the day, you may get up and your first thoughts are, oh no, I have to go to that job again today. And when I get there, there's going to be all this tension and whatever. So perhaps rather than starting the day on that really low note, you get up and think, oh, wow, I have a job. I'm going to work today and I'm going to be paid. There are people there that I don't necessarily get on very well with, but perhaps if I change my tone with them, or just if I come out and just start chatting to them in a really nice way, maybe they'll chat back and there won't be this tension. But even if that doesn't work, I'll keep happy. I'll know that the job that I'm doing is worthwhile, and I am really lucky these days to have a job. So it's this mindset that we are totally capable of changing within ourselves. We just have to realise that change is possible, and our subconscious mind learns by repetition. So the more often you get up with that changed mindset, the more you'll become used to it, the more it will become the new you.
Sue, what are 3 tips you can offer our viewers to use in their everyday lives?
Expanding more on what we were saying a moment ago is being aware. So when you get up in the morning, check yourself. What is your mindset when you get up? I'm not saying everyone gets up with that really depressed and down feeling. Some people get up and think, oh, another bright day. What can I do to make today better? And that's a fabulous mindset to have, because that means you'll be able to build on that during the day. You'll be able to strike up conversations with people. And you can also use the mindset and mindfulness to feel how you are physically in your body. You can do a physical check of your body, perhaps when you get out of the shower, so that you've warmed up a bit, your muscles are warmed up and you're ready to get on with your day. Just start at the top of your head, move down, check if there are any aches and pains anywhere, check if there's any tension in your neck and shoulders, and after you shower you shouldn't have tension in those areas. So if you do, then that's a good place to start. Why have I got this tension? Let me consciously loosen those muscles. Why do I have the tension? Are the thoughts that I'm thinking inappropriate to my well-being? So then I can change it, go right down through your body. And sometimes you'll hold negative thoughts in your stomach. And as soon as you think of someone who that negative thought is about, you'll get that griping pain in your stomach. And you'll think, well, why is that happening? So it's using your mind to change your physical being. So the main thing is that the mind is very powerful. You are able to use it at any time, and you should investigate just how your mind's set, and using mindfulness will benefit you every day.
Thanks for those amazing tips, Sue. If you'd like to know more about Sue Williams and how hypnotherapy can aid athletic and our everyday performance and our general well-being, go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we'll have another interesting guest with another interesting topic. Stay tuned. After the break, psychic medium and author Anthony Kilner will be talking about the differences between physical and metaphysical life experiences. Welcome back. Our next guest, Anthony Kilner, is a psychic medium and author, and the topic we'll be discussing is what are the differences between physical and metaphysical life experiences. Welcome, Anthony.
Thanks, Megan, and thanks for having me here again.
So what is the difference between the two?
Wow, this has got to be my all-time favourite topic. We talk about physical and metaphysical. Physical is objective, it is what it is. You got a pain in your knee, you got a pain in your knee. The metaphysical or the subjective interpretation of what that pain represents, now that becomes more of a challenge and a bit of fun because it'll be subjective, requiring interpretation, so much like a dream. So if we use the left knee as the example, the pain in the knee, you've got a pain, you've bruised it, you've done something, damaged it, it's sore, and that's what it is. You go and see your doctor and you get it fixed. However, if you took notice of it and how it happened, then that's going to give you an understanding that maybe things from your past you're not being very flexible about letting go, and so the knee represents flexibility in your direction, so that then means you're not being flexible in your direction because past things are holding you back. And the knock or the bruise or the damage as a result of taking note of that is to make you really aware of that interpretation. If it was the right knee though, and you had the same pain and the same, oh my gosh, I've got a pain in my knee, what's that? It's about not being flexible moving forward. And while they sound very similar, one is the past holding you back, one is a fear stopping you from moving forward, so you're not being as flexible in your direction as possible. So that interpretation applies to your whole physical body. All right, so if we look at the hand, for example, it does, the left is past, the little finger represents children, the ring finger, relationships, the index finger, sexuality, then we have our pointer, that is you controlling the situation, thumb represents you're under the thumb. So if you get a pain in your thumb and you might think, oh, why am I getting that? And it's on the left side, you might feel that you're being put under the thumb by someone who's trying to control you. All right? Now, as we're sitting here, we can hear it, audience might not, there's a siren going off in the background. So when we're talking about things and you notice the siren going off, then that's a warning sign for you to be more aware of what's happening around you, to maybe not say what you're about to say, those sorts of things. So the universe actually helps create all these messages that are subjective or metaphysical, subjective, and require interpretation. And it all's based around what you do. So then we have, like I said, eyes represent how you see. So left eye is how you see the past, right eye is how you see the future. All right? When you get stressed, most people carry stress and burdens in our shoulders. Feeling a pain in the middle of your back is like somebody stabbing you in the back, and you might get that while you're thinking of somebody and you'll just go, oh wow, that pain feels really intense, and that's how it comes across. So there's all these different things from the universe. Your house represents things, so you know, a blocked toilet is, you know, you have to get a plumber in to fix it. It could then also represent that you're holding on to too much of your rubbish and you need somebody to help you to let it go.
What can we learn from our everyday life experiences?
Best thing in understanding all of this is don't go looking for it. Everyday experiences occur because the universe is trying to get us messages, right? Different from dreams. The universe is providing that. And so if we notice something, we interpret it. The multitude of experiences, you can put it out there, and I did this when I was living in India. It was every morning I would say to the spirit world and to the universe, as part of my morning ritual, okay, so give me a sign as I walk along my path on the side of the hill that what happens there will mean or say make sense of what my day is going to be like. And so some days I'd walk out and there'd be a dog sitting there and it'd come up and have a pat, and the dog represents loyalty. Right? The colours of the dog would then be, if it was black and white, it'd be like finding balance in loyalty. Right? Other days there'd be a butterfly come out of nowhere and just sort of either land on me or hover in front of my face. And again, that means there's transition occurring in that day. Walk out and there's a cow blocking the path. Now in the Indian culture, cows are sacred. So then there's a sacredness to my journey, and I have to maybe find a way around that without disturbing it, but learn more. So all those things come into play. And in our daily lives, problems with cars. So, you get a flat tyre and say it's a flat tyre on the right rear and it's a front wheel drive car. All right, so we're mashing it all up because, ex-mechanic, I can talk about these quite well. Most people understand a car. So right rear wheel, it's not a drive wheel, so there's something that's stopping you for a moment, that's dragging you back, right, to stop in your direction and think about where you're going and what you're doing. And that then, you fix the tyre and you get moving again, but you need that breather to understand what's happening in that space. Why can't you move forward? And that's what the universe provides. And water leaks are the same. Water represents emotions. So if you've got a water leak in your car and it's a radiator, there's something explosive happening. There's frustration, there's anger, there's hot, there's steam. All those things come into it. So if you interpret it, you might say, well, in your direction, what's stopping you from living a happy life and being nice and relaxed and calm in your direction? Why are you getting frustrated and angry and hot under the collar, so to speak? So all of those things are important, and the universe provides a plethora of that. So the understanding is to embrace it in your everyday life, is to just learn and take note of what's actually happening in that space. What does it mean? Absorb it and just move on.
Do you have any suggestions for our viewers in their own journey in discovering the difference in their own lives with the physical and metaphysical?
Yeah, my big suggestion first off is journal. Write everything down. So if it grabs your attention, write it down. It's super important, because then you don't have to think about it later, you can just interpret it. A good dream interpretation book is good as well, because interpretations for dream and subjective are very similar. Also, finding someone that can help you to interpret it if you're not sure. And that's really important. And I find sitting circle, which is, the spiritual aspect of learning all of this stuff, your body doesn't lie. Your body tells you what's going on. You've just got to pay attention to it. In a good circle, you'll learn that as well.
Thanks, Anthony. That's such rich information. If you'd like to know more about Anthony Kilner and the difference between the physical and the metaphysical life experience, please go to his webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And that's all for us today, and we'll say bye-bye for now and see you next week. If you'd like to know more about our show, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.